Gentlemen, we are dealing with the undead.
Mas, Maralto.
Yes, nosferatu. The undead. The vampire.
According to the legends of my people, the last Count Dracula became one of the undead. A vampire.
I am Dracula. I bid you welcome.
Welcome to the now playing Universal Films Dracula Movie Retrospective Series.
I have crossed oceans of time to find you.
Hosted by Jacob.
Oh, and I have waited an eternity for a man of your strength, your gifts, your will.
Arnie.
I am considered somewhat of an authority on the subject.
And Stuart.
We've all become God's madmen. All of us.
This episode will contain detailed plot spoilers and strong language.
Run to your mother.
We hope you enjoy the show.
Now, let's eat.
Today we're discussing The Last Voyage of the Demeter, starring Corey Hawkins, Aisling Franciosi, Liam Cunningham, and David Dastmalchian. Directed by Andre Uvedal. This is the now playing co-host who's an evil that appears as a man when it wants to podcast and hide its true nature, Arnie.
And Stuart.
And this is the co-host who won't serve any man who takes the Lord's name in vain, Jacob.
Hey, happy Friday, everyone. It's a free show for you. This is kind of a rarity. We don't always do this.
No.
There's just too much coming out in theaters.
Yes, and it's a way to say thank you to all of our now playing listeners, patrons, donors. Thank you so much for your support of our show that we wanted to do a free Friday show for everyone instead of just pushing everything and playing kick the can on theatrical releases by a week. Allows us to get to Gran Turismo faster. But I do want to remind people, if you like getting shows on Friday, if you want to get shows, bonus shows on Friday, we can do that. The best way to support Now Playing is by being a patron, where you're going to get shows. There's over 80 bonus shows for patrons of $10 a month through Apple, Spotify, Patreon, or Podbean. And there's 2 more coming out. There's going to be one next Friday. We're going to review a little known film some people have talked about called Seven Samurai.
It's true. Our first Akira Kurosawa.
And then the week after that, an 80s gem, Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins, the kickoff of that massive franchise.
Or is it coal still being pressurized into a diamond?
He ain't popping up in the Expendables. They take a lot of 80s wash-ups, but Fred Ward didn't make the cut.
That adventure began, and I don't know if it ever ended. Maybe ended at the same time.
I think it ended the second that any Asian people see Joel Grey in that movie, but, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, every single month our patrons get an exclusive bonus review. There's over 80 already there. And yeah, much like the distance between Seven Samurai and Remo Williams, our bonus reviews cover a complete gamut of films. I mean, we've discussed Apocalypse Now and Vietnam films like Platoon and Full Metal Jacket. And then we've gone the entire other direction. We have Cats. We have The Last Dragon. We have Monster Trucks.
It's kind of like a catch-all of movies you want to hear about but aren't part of a long franchise. So the only way you're going to hear us talk about them is if you become a patron.
So thank you to everyone. If you want to sign up, nowplayingpodcast.com/donate has links to our Apple feed, our Patreon feed, our Spotify feed, and our Podbean feed. So we thank you in advance for supporting our show and hope you enjoyed this special bonus Friday review as we bite into an 8th Dracula film this year. There was one more after Renfield kind of waiting for us.
The other side of the coin. If Renfield is the joke with, the king of tongue-in-cheek performances, Nick Cage is Dracula, this one is going the other way. This one is saying we're trying to get back to Nosferatu, really. We're going to try to give you a vampire that the director wanted to be the scariest Dracula ever seen.
He did not succeed, spoiler alert, but we will talk about it.
Yeah, nobody can beat Gary Oldman in the kabuki wig. Yeah, that is just beyond scary. But it might surprise you to know that this movie was supposed to come out on the heels of the Coppola film. It was actually written alongside the production of that movie.
I mean, it was written by Bram Stoker a long, long time ago before that.
Well, okay, yes, this is based on one chapter of the Bram Stoker Dracula novel, but the idea for making a whole movie out of such a thing came about the fact that a screenwriter was a roommate of somebody working on the Coppola production, said, that's a really cool ship model you built, and it isn't featured very well in the movie in the end. I doubt you even remember Dracula being on a ship in that Coppola film. So the writer, his name is Bragi Shute, just sort of freeformed the idea of what would it be like to just tell that part of the story. And his inspiration, God knows, every time I read about this movie, Ridley Scott's Alien. Alien. We're trying to remake Alien with Dracula on a boat.
And conceptually, that sounds awesome. I'm down for it.
Yeah, I was reading that as an idea, and absolutely, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, a lot of people tried to make this happen in the last 20 years. Not Ridley Scott, not the man that actually made Alien, but Noomi Rapace was actually going to be Anna, the one that ended up being sort of the Ripley of Prometheus. At one point, it was going to be a vehicle for her. Jude Law, Viggo Mortensen, they were going to be Clemens. Directors, well, the guy that made the Jodie Foster Where's My Daughter airplane movie Flight Plan, Robert Schwenke was first assigned to it. Marcus Nispel, we've praised and demonized him. He rebooted both the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Friday the 13th. And Arnie, you're a big fan of The Descent. Neil Marshall also had his hands on this at one point.
Yeah, instead we got the guy who did a film I'm kind of a fan of. I liked The Autopsy of Jane Doe. I watched that for Halloween a couple years ago, and I didn't think it lived up to all the hype, but I thought it lived up to some of the hype.
What? That's the one you know? I don't know that one. That's not the one he's known for.
I've seen two of his films, 2019's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, a PG-13 horror film. It wasn't great. But I think his big breakout was 2010's Troll Hunter. I remember a bunch of buzz going on about this film. Got it on Netflix. I'm like, really? This is what people are getting excited about. I don't know. Trolls are silly, and I just thought it was hard to take it seriously, these giant trolls.
I'm not sure it was taking itself totally seriously, but I kind of agree with what I hear you saying. Overdoll is a little bit overrated. Yeah, Troll Hunter was the breakout. It was sort of like a Blair Witch thing where these people were running around Scandinavia trying to find real trolls, and they do, and it's a problem for them. And then, yeah, I don't know anything about that Autopsy one, Arnie, but Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was a big old hit a few years ago, taking sort of like before there was Goosebumps, there was apparently this 80s horror book series that they weaved into a Robert Altman style tapestry of horror. It had its moments. I agree, Jacob. Overall, I appreciated that they tried to do something different than just your typical Creepshow anthology. Here's a story, here's a story, here's a story. They weave them all together in one big thing.
Sounds like a perfect pick for a patron one-off.
I'm sure we'll cover it one day. It was a hit. It will have a sequel. It's kind of what put him on Universal's list for taking over this long-stalled project. But there were a lot of bad omens. I just want to say I was not encouraged to see this movie, starting with the fact that they shot it 2 years ago, and it's just been sitting on a shelf.
Oh.
Look, here's the thing. First of all, looking at the marketing for this thing, because conceptually, like, good idea. And the fact that we did all this Dracula stuff, like, I'm like, yeah, that boat stuff, like, it got shorter and shorter every Dracula film we did. And so really expanding on that, there's a good horror movie there. But the fact that you're calling this the last voyage of the Demeter, like, can people even say the word Demeter, like, when you're going to buy your I guess you just buy your tickets online, but weird name. And then that first trailer, it just looks like a boat movie. Like, was there a monster? Finally, they did release another trailer where I think they figured out, oh, we got to show that there's a vampire here. There's something scary here. So that second trailer, when they actually showed the monster, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it's going to be all right. But I think bad marketing for this.
Yeah, bad marketing. No studio support is what I would honestly say. The fact that they're finally releasing it in the middle of August with no press screening. I saw no reviews prior to walking in on Thursday to see the film. It just felt like this thing was being tossed out like a message in a bottle. Like maybe you'll find it, but probably not. It's only a $45 million movie, which in terms of studio movie making, pretty cheap, but they won't make it back.
$6.5 million opening weekend, I think.
Yeah, it probably won't even make half of that.
Like, not on Friday, not on Saturday, the whole weekend.
You know, I was not excited for this movie when Stuart kept saying there's one more Dracula waiting for us this year. I found it hard to believe Universal would release 2 Dracula films in the same year. So I was like, is this really part of our retrospective focusing in on Universal Pictures Dracula? I don't think they made this one. They distributed this one. This was a DreamWorks picture. I noticed the logo at the beginning of this. But yes, this was out there. The first trailer, like you said, Jacob, really made me not want to see it. The title, the fact that it's a period piece, but that second trailer did give me hope. And the fact that I had also read that they were trying to remake Alien. And I'm like, Alien, instead of being in the future, being in the past, instead of being on a spaceship, being on a boat, that could be a really good movie. And I haven't watched Alien in a while.
As long as it's not an alien in the past in a pyramid with the Predator.
I mean, yeah, we've seen a lot of Alien knockoffs. Yeah, I agree. The strange thing is they dropped the name Demeter like we're supposed to know what that is.
Exactly.
Even having read the book recently, I couldn't have told you the name of the ship. I mean, this was not like even one of the better chapters in the book. So I didn't see that there was a lot of cachet to setting any movie inside of Dracula's novel and not telling the whole Bram Stoker story. It seemed weird. But yeah, you say Alien to me, you got my attention. I hope that they can get half of what Ridley Scott got back in 1979. Let's find out. Arnie, you got the plot?
In the late 19th century, the ship, the Demeter, set sail from Bulgaria, taking its load of 50 crates of cargo to England. The ship's captain was Elliot, played by Liam Cunningham, and his first mate was Wojciech, played by David Dastmalchian. They need 3 more sailors to make this voyage, so in Bulgaria they hired those 3 men, including Cambridge-educated Dr. Clemens, played by Corey Hawkins. Clemens rounds out a crew of 8 on the Demeter, and they're also accompanied by a little boy named Toby. On the voyage, a crate overturns and out comes a sick woman. Clemens tends to the woman, named Anna, with frequent blood transfusions, and she eventually awakens. But also on this trip is Count Dracula. Anna was brought along to be his food on the voyage, but now that she's set free, he starts to feed on the ship's crew one at a time. Even little Toby isn't safe from the vampire's fangs, and he is killed. Finally, when only a few are left, the captain, first mate, and Clemens agree to sink the Demeter, lest the monster reach the mainland of England. Dracula stymies those plans, though, killing the captain and the first mate. Anna and Clemens end up the only survivors, but they're adrift at sea, while the Demeter, now devoid of any human life, sails unmanned towards England. In the ocean, without the blood transfusions, Anna turns into a vampire and is killed by the sun. But in an epilogue, we see Clemens survived and made it to mainland England. He's hunting Dracula, or is Dracula hunting him, as credits roll.
Okay, let's get it out of the way. As we start, we have an intertitle that just tells everyone, let's just lay it out for the illiterate and the people that just walked in because they thought it was a horror movie. This is a Dracula film. This is based on a chapter from Bram Stoker. Why? Is it important that they need to do that?
I am so confused by this opening intertitle. This could be the whole podcast because ever since I saw this, I'm trying to figure out why do you do this opening intertitle? Fine, okay, 1897, you're establishing the year. Like, they have other intertitles that are going to tell us the place, but why does it say based on the novel Dracula? I am watching a fictional film. Here's the thing. When I go into a movie, I have made a deal with the artist that I'm going to suspend my disbelief, that I'm going to go, I don't know what a Dracula is or this ship, even though I know, and you're going to surprise me with this reveal. Why are you telling me that this is from the novel Dracula, guys? Like, I don't know. It really threw me for a loop the entire time. I'm like, are they going to spin this some way that, like, no, this is like the true story that Bram Stoker stole for his book? Like, again, I could be overthinking this, but it really threw me for a spin that they're just going to tell us, like, hey, guys, we just took this from a book.
I do think you're overthinking it just a little bit there, Jacob.
But Stuart is confused too.
I do think that it's smart to put out there Dracula. Put Dracula first and foremost.
I don't go and watch the Avengers and they're like, oh, this is based on Avengers 572 through 603. Like, you don't need that. There's nothing relevant about that piece of information for this story.
Well, here's the real question to ask. Is Dracula a draw in 2023? We haven't had a Dracula proper movie, not counting that silly thing with Luke Evans, in 30 years. We haven't had a Bram Stoker telling.
Judging by the box office of Renfield and this, Dracula is not a draw.
But here's the thing, if you're seeing this intertitle, you've already bought your ticket. Like, that information's too late.
Well, again, I suspect a lot of people went to this because they just thought it was a vampire or a monster movie.
Not a lot of people went to this, though. 6.5 million.
I hear your point, but just you do this as an act of desperation. You do this because you get test screening cards back that say, was this Dracula? I don't know. And to which I ask, why is it even important to tie to this? To Dracula. If you were to read Dracula and someone runs to you and says, ooh, what do you think happened on the Demeter? You'd be like, well, the vampire probably ate all the sailors, right? And guess what? That's what it did. Like, there's no surprise. You might as well be Blackula or Batsy the disco vampire. Like, who cares that it's Dracula, particularly since it looks like no Dracula we've ever had before. It has no personality. It has no sex appeal. It will never be human. It's a monster.
Yeah.
So why call it Dracula?
I don't know.
Just for the English majors, the few English majors that might be able to tie a few things like, oh, the captain got tied to the wheel at the end, and that's how they found him in another movie.
I mean, we have seen monstrous depictions of vampires before where they do look very much like this. I do not feel like this was a super unique look at a vampire anymore.
No, it's Nosferatu. They copied Max Schreck. But that's a different thing. And again, that's an unofficial Dracula. They can't even use Dracula when they're talking about that. It's Count Orlok. Again, I guess all I'm really saying is, who cares if it's Dracula or not? Does it add any layers of intrigue to know that this is the Count on this boat and not just any old vampire?
No, and I'm confused because you're like telling us this boat's found derelict, and then you're just going to show us that, again, maybe it's they got the feedback cards from the test screenings that people were super confused, even though we're going to be told right away, like, oh no, this is England, like, this is an old boat. I could tell this is not modern day. This opening intertitle was so damn confusing for me.
Again, I think not to overthink it.
Too late.
All you really see is an opening where you see a boat crash on the rocks. Some officials run up and one man stumbles out and says, I can't even go back in there. It's so scary. Everyone's dead. And then we cut back 1 month and we see everyone getting on this boat and it seems lively. And so what happened in that month for everything to go so wrong? By the way, if you're telling me it's Dracula, I know a vampire is going to eat them all. So suspense is low.
Yeah, like I already know what's going to happen. I know what happens when Dracula gets to England because I've seen the movies. I've tried to read the book, but I know that story.
And there's no left curve here. There's no ironic surprise that it really was the Wolfman bunking with Dracula or something, or that Dracula is the good guy and it was a human that killed them all.
That's what I'm saying. You do this to set up a twist.
You know, when they make Wicked, they tell you Glinda the Good Witch is the villain, and the green one was the nice one. You have to put a spin on something classic in order for people to feel like, oh, it's relevant again. That we're going to be on a boat for a month with Dracula eating sailors feels fairly brain dead. Like there's not a lot of mystery, intrigue in that premise at all. I don't know why that is a hot concept.
And it's not bugging me. I give the films their concepts, and I was willing to give this film that this is Dracula. This is an extrapolation of that one chapter of the story. Yeah, the opening titles, the thing that bugged me about them is they didn't stay on the screen very long, and you had to really read fast to get that first title going. But none of this that you guys are grousing about bothered me in the slightest. I'm like, let's just get into it. Let's get into a vampire movie on a boat.
You could say adaptation of a novel in the opening credits, but not as part of the story, unless you're like Wes Anderson and trying to make a meta commentary on different forms of art leading into each other, like he likes to do with plays going into movies and to books.
I will just say, in its 20 years of inception, this probably had lots of different writers and ideas attached to it, and what is here is probably not what was originally inspiring. I mean, this is so Hollywood, right? 20 years ago, this was the hot script everyone wanted to make, and now it's the movie they're throwing away in the dog days of summer and no one's seeing. So, a cautionary tale about what was trendy and cool about something getting drained of all of that by the time it makes it to the screen. But yeah, again, all I want to emphasize is that I just don't think that it's a particularly intriguing setup. So what? We're on the Demeter. It could be any boat. It could be any monster. Just tell it good, and that's what's important. It's about style. And so, yes, what we have is a crew of people boarding a ship along with 50 crates that have the dragon insignia we all know to be the Count's family insignia.
And you talk about style, and I want to give this film some props right from the beginning. I think it looks fantastic. I think all of the production design, everything going on, the set design, the camera work in this, it really has a sheen to it that I enjoy. I like looking at this film the entire 2 hours I'm watching it.
You said the budget was 40-something million. I mean, that is pretty impressive, especially for, I mean, look, a lot of CGI. They're not really on the ocean, but to do the boat stuff, they got to do some water. That's expensive. Yeah, it looks good. Like, I can't wait to talk about the monster design. Like, I don't have a problem with how this film looks. A little dark at times, not as bad as Boogeyman, though.
I will hold my complaint until we get onto the open water, but I will in general say they have the money they need to tell this story. Yes, I don't think technical issues are going to be in any way a problem for this film. Characters are. Let's just go ahead and say that. We are told the person we should care about is Clemens, and he is totally made up for this movie. There was no Clemens in the Dracula novel that I recall, and certainly he wasn't black and finding difficulty finding work in Romania and having to slum it as a ship hand.
No.
This is all contrived because basically they just came to this actor. Again, they had so many different actors, not all of them black, lined up for this role. This is just sort of what they had to deal with once they hired Dr. Dre. Straight Outta Compton's Dr. Dre is here. That's what I know him from anyway. It's Corey Hawkins. He was also in Skull Island, that Coen Brothers Macbeth movie.
Yeah, I saw you had a bunch of credits of movies I've seen, but yeah, Straight Outta Compton is the one that's most recognizable.
Yeah, that's where I recognize his face from. I thought that was a really good movie. And yeah, like you, Jacob, I've seen him in a lot of stuff, but I don't remember him from a lot of stuff. I mean, Black Klansman was a great movie. I don't remember him in it.
Yeah, don't remember who he was. He was not the Black Klansman. I know that.
No. And again, what is the importance of Clemens? They fail to create a central conflict for him. What we will extrapolate, what I hear a lot is he has this line about how he's trying to find meaning in the world and that he couldn't find work in England after being trained in Cambridge as a doctor and came to Romania to work with royalty. They saw he was black and now he's just in a hurry to get back to another racist country. I don't even know why he needs to get back to England, but he does, and because that's all that we're given, we're hoping that he gets picked. Honestly, when I saw the cast list, I thought David Dalmatian would actually be Dracula.
He should be.
This sort of slightly imposing first mate. Like, I don't know, what's the conflict here? Is he just racist? He doesn't want to hire the black guy. He'd rather hire the one-eyed sailor?
Well, I didn't take it as that. Like, why would you hire a doctor to run a boat? That is hard work. You want someone with some muscle. Nothing against Clemens, but I don't see big burly muscles on him to heave-ho and raise the mast and all that, so...
But he did hire an older man with one eye, so...
That dude was big, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying one-eyed people can't work ship rigging, but...
That seems appropriate for a boat. Like, pirates have eye patches. Like, yes, get the one-eyed man.
But you get what I'm saying. There's some kind of tension that they're building between these two that I think is supposed to carry through the movie and probably in some drafts was more central, but now just becomes sort of a, every time they see each other, they glare, but not a big conflict.
I agree, like, throughout, I'm like, does Voyage just, like, not like science? Like, why does he have a grudge the entire film?
Yeah, they try to build into the idea that our main character is a man of science and searching for meaning, and so running into a vampire is going to do what for his existential crisis? You tell me. I can't figure it out.
I mean, they're going to give us a line at the end. He's seen evil, but he knows the world is good, too. I don't know how he comes to that conclusion, but that's the moral of the story, I guess.
Yeah, they're trying to make that happen in this setup here, but he is initially rejected for whatever reason and only gets on because as they are loading in those crates with the dragon insignia, the one-eyed helper knows what that means and it scares the hell out of him. He lets the rope slip and it almost crushes the captain's adoptive son, Toby.
I thought it was going to behead the guy who dropped it, whatever his name is, the guy who doesn't go on the ship, the one who was freaked out by the dragon. It looked like the rope went around his neck, and I thought we were going to start with a good, gory opening kill of somebody getting their head ripped off by a rope. But no, it's almost going to kill the little boy, but the guy who did the dropping just is going to be like, I know what dragons stand for, and I'm not taking this gig.
Right. Setting up mood. And again, because they told us Dracula already, there's no suspense about what he knows. We know what he knows.
Yeah, when Romani, who deliver the crates, are like, we can't stay past sundown. I'm like, yeah, I know why. Like, there's no suspense.
I I actually was like, I'd be having the biggest all-nighter.
To get those out of there?
Like, for centuries, a vampire has been stalking you and you just shipped it off? That is like, all right, let's have a hoedown. I mean, seriously. And they got away cheap. All they did was stuff a woman in a crate and they're free of this evil forever. I don't know why they're not in better moods.
I see why they don't want to stay on the boat, though. Wait for the boat to go, then have your party, but you don't want to stick around with vampires.
Dracula's not going to pop out while you're like still loading the crates if the sun has just gone down.
Right.
Can I just say, though, I love that Dracula had a meal plan on his voyage. You know, because when I was talking to Marjorie before I saw this film, she's like, well, what's this film about? And I'm like, well, Dracula, he took a boat to England. And she's like, well, why did he take a boat? Why didn't he fly? I'm like, well, he needed his coffin. He needed his dirt.
Needs his dirt.
And he had to eat on the way. And so he ate the sailors. And she's like, that doesn't seem like a very solid plan. What if the boat doesn't make it? And he's like, well, he fed on them as a while. So I love that this movie is going to actually address this in a somewhat logical fashion, that Dracula brought along this woman to feed on for the voyage. He didn't plan on eating the crew.
No, that doesn't make any sense because he brought one lady, she gets free. He eats more than one crew member. Like, and these crew members are bigger than a lady.
Yeah, she's just a snack. He's supposed to eat everyone. I mean, he starts with rats. We will see that as the ship takes off, there are a lot of rats scurrying around, and by the middle of the voyage, no more rats. So he starts small, and yes.
Oh, you think he ate the rats? I thought the rats literally jumped off the ship.
Of course he did.
Like, they knew that the ship was infested with vampires.
Yeah, but he gets some of those rats.
No, and he's eating the livestock and the dog and all of that.
Oh, I know he's eating the livestock, but I literally, when they're talking, there's the scene where the guy goes, a ship without rats is dangerous. I thought literally the rats jumped off the ship and drowned rather than stick around the evil of the vampire.
All we see is him scurry. I can't tell you conclusively, but it looks like that this vampire is starting with the livestock. The plan was by the time that they're, halfway to England and away from all ports, they can't go and dock and do anything. Then he can actually start attacking the human crew. But the lady is just a snack that he's bringing along for the first leg of the voyage. But anyway, back to Clemens. He gets a tour of the boat, and I agree with you. This is a pretty impressive set. It seems like most of the money went into designing the Demeter. And my compliment is that it's cool to be on a wooden ship. I wanted to call it the HMS James Wan because they have this knocking game kind of thing where like,
I was thinking of the Conjuring, yes.
Tap on the wood, and it's going to knock back. I'm like, okay, this is called foreshadowing. I know that they're going to have a lot of fun with that. James Wan would approve. Yeah, overall, I think the Demeter, I always like things that are about a location. That part is true. What I will ding is, once the boat gets sailing, this movie, it's indiscriminate about, they didn't build this set on gimbals. It's pretty obvious that they're not moving, the crew is walking around, but their lamps will be shaking back and forth. They built things into the set to move as if it's swaying with the waves, but the people are not in sync with that. So the illusion that they are at sea, many times for me, was shattered.
Now who's overthinking things, Arnie?
No, I mean, again, you pay attention to these. And I saw this movie twice. And am paying attention to, things like, wow, this boat really isn't moving. Is anyone in the other cast grabbing you? I know that the main captain is from Game of Thrones, a show I don't watch.
He's got a look to him. I haven't watched Game of Thrones, so I don't know this actor, but I'm like, he looks like someone I've seen. He's grizzled. He had a look to him. There's no characters here, but people have looks.
I watched most of Game of Thrones, but there's so many damn people in that show. That's like saying somebody's on The Walking Dead. There's so many damn people from those shows. I don't know who Liam Cunningham is. No.
Okay. He's not a standout then. I mean, because you would know there are certain ones you'll remember.
Yeah, there's a handful that I remember, and I don't remember Liam Cunningham.
Jason Momoa, Emily Clark.
Yeah, Amelia, yeah. And so...
Liam's not one of them.
No, and there's nobody in this cast other than David Dastmalchian, who is becoming the official mascot of Now Playing. We're reviewing...
He isn't so much.
Yeah, he is all over the place anymore that I feel like he's drawing my attention. You said he should play Dracula. I thought he was going to become a Renfield-like character. I thought he might actually join up with Dracula just because he's such a nasty person and doesn't seem to like our main character of Clemens very much. But everybody else, they just, maybe it's good makeup. Maybe it's that they all look very period and they all look very sailory and stereotypical with got the beards and they got everything going on, but I'm not really being drawn to any of them. I'm like, we got a body count. It's going to take a while before we actually start killing the bodies, but we got a body count that we're building up here.
Yeah, I'm thinking if you're telling me the entire story with an opening intertitle, then you're going to have some kind of interesting dialogue. It's going to be about these characters and different points of view and, whoa, was I wrong? Like, yeah, they're going to say some stuff. I've seen evil in this world, and it's so generic.
Yeah, I mean, again, thinking about Alien, if that was the model, you could tell the difference between all the characters there. You know, they were all working class Joes, they all wanted their paycheck, and they were all inconvenienced about having to stop and pick up the alien. But, you know, the setup is kind of the same, but I do feel like all those actors were able to shine in little moments. They had great interplay amongst themselves. And here, yeah, everyone kind of looks the same, nobody's a name I recognize, and I don't hear any backstory. The cook is religious. The only thing I hear of value is the cook thinks that these people are sinful. And so when people start dying, he's grabbing the Bible.
I mean, that's why I use that for my opening line. Is like one of the few things that stood out to me was that cook is religious. Okay.
And the captain, you know, this is his last voyage. You know, it's kind of a big old cliche there too. But I'm going to retire to Ireland, and he's going to give David Dastmalchian the ship. You know, Wojciech is going to inherit his captain duties. And so it's extra poignant that they're not going to be able to reach the end, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't feel anything throughout this entire movie. I didn't feel anything, I guess I should just say right up front.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. But when I'm seeing this little handoff of the ship, I'm like, well, here's the problem. I know they're all dead. The movie opens telling me they're all dead.
Right.
And so even though in the back of my mind, I'm like, you know, they may not kill Clemens. They may find some clever way to let Clemens live. But I'm not going to be invested in any of these characters. And the fact that the cook is going to call one a whoremonger and, you know, damn them all for their heathenistic ways they want to spend their bonuses is not going to affect me. I'm like, can we get to some vampires?
Yeah, I was actually wondering if we're going to find out Clemens, his real name was like Van Helsing or something. I was waiting for some big reveal, but because we know they're all dead because the opening told us, and if you read Dracula, which is based on because the opening told us, where's the suspense? It's not there. But again, character study, interesting dialogue, a study of different points of views and all that kind of stuff. It could still save this concept, but none of that is there.
Yeah, I mean, again, you could approach any slasher movie and know that the cast is going to be whittled down to 1, 2, or 0. It's the idea that it's tragic that you're losing them. So you have to like them knowing the idea that they're not going to make it. And I don't feel like I connect. You know, they have a kid, so maybe I'm a little bit partial to Toby.
A dog and a kid to get your sympathies.
Yeah, they got a dog, they got a kid. But Arnie is correct. It is 30 minutes before there is any bloodshed at all, and that is the dog.
And this is a full hour, 50-minute movie, and I felt every minute of that length, too. Yeah. And I was like, I was watching my watch while I was watching the film, and yeah, it's going to be a half an hour before we get Dracula breaking out of his coffin and out of his crate and doing any kind of damage. And I'm like, okay, you give a movie 30 minutes to get it set up and set up its characters. All right, you took the full 30, go for it. Now, let's get to it. And what we're going to get to is a lot of dead animals. He killed the cattle on board and he killed the dog.
Yeah, I think there's like one real minor jump scare where a sailor is looking through a telescope and he sees a face for half a second.
Yeah, right. They try to tease Dracula, even though the trailers showed the full Monty.
Based on the novel Dracula, I know there's a vampire on this ship. You told me.
Well, you can know there's a vampire and not know how he's going to look. I mean, I think that's fair.
There's going to be a second monster on here?
No, you don't know that it's going to look the way that it did. This is not a Dracula we have ever seen. Nosferatu, yes. Dracula, no. So you could, if you had concealed it from the trailers, you would have no idea. Honestly, you would probably think it was going to look like Bela Lugosi. And so it would be a shock when, yeah, suddenly there's this thing with fangs and big, you know, piercing eyes and real skinny. I think about Alien and the way that the xenomorph was able to like curl into small corners and then unfurl. It was lanky. You know, it had long limbs. They kind of give that quality to Dracula. They start teasing what he looks like here. I think we're supposed to be intrigued by Anna. I think what is supposed to be keeping the first third of the movie alive is that they find his stowaway first. But she's in a coma. She can't talk. She can't tell them anything about what she's going through. And even though Clemens gives her a blood transfusion, I guess he doesn't notice that she's covered in bites.
Yeah, nobody notices these big scars on her.
He's gonna notice bites on all the animals' necks. I was so confused why he didn't discover this on Anna.
Yeah. The problem is, let's just call it what it is. If this were a week-long voyage, you would have tightness and you could really build into that. The fact that it's a month makes these people look like fools.
Yep.
Like, you really should have been able to find the vampire in a month. You should have started sinking this in the daylight and not on the last day at night. Like, if you want to succeed at killing a vampire, and they know it's a creature of the night drinking blood, at least 15 days before they get to London, they should be smarter than they are.
Especially when you have a man of science on board.
And they're going to try to play this like, you know, oh, we're so far out by the time anything happens. England is the closest port, so we have no choice but to go ahead. I got to think there's got to be some way, in case of an emergency, there's someplace else they could stop.
I think they even are stopping. I think it was even mentioned that Clemens is like, you could let us off at the next port.
Yeah, there is a port coming up.
These men don't like this woman. They literally suggest any stowaway should be thrown overboard. And it's doubly bad because in sailor beliefs, women are bad luck signs. So that she is here is a reason to just pull over in Greece or wherever you're going and just dump them.
And you'd think that at that port, they might be able to pick up some more food. I mean, I think one of the big problems is,
right,
all the livestock is dead. What are we going to eat?
The thing, I heard it early and then they kind of go away from it. But I bet you some drafts of this script emphasize this, had this be a talking point. They stand to get big bonuses if they deliver their payload early. They get there before August 6th, then they make even more. And so it's greed that keeps them from making those protective choices. I heard that early, but then that kind of goes away. And certainly by the time that half your sailors are dead and there's still 12 days to go, guess what? The bonus doesn't matter. You're splitting up more of the money anyway. All the dead men's money is now your money. So just stop being greedy and get off the damn vampire show. It's a hard thing to swallow. By the middle of this movie, when it wants to get going, you really have to turn off your brain.
Though, when one person finally does get off the ship, I'm confused why Dracula goes and chases him down when he's still got food on board.
What do you mean?
When the guy's in the lifeboat rowing away and Dracula is going to go after him. I'm like,
oh, okay, yeah.
Just stay on the ship.
All right, well, let's talk about it like a slasher, because I don't know any other way to talk about this. We'll just, set them up and knock them down. 40 minutes in, we finally have a human target. There's this Russian named Petrovsky, who has kind of thrown shade at Clemens, spoken in racist language towards him, accuses him of being somebody that might have even hurt the livestock. I don't know. It's, again, a kind of a false tension there. But he's going to be our first kill. He's having the first late night shift, and wouldn't you know it, he hears a voice, he sees something curled up in a dark corner, and I think Dracula is hungry, because he hasn't had Anna to nibble on, he is actually physically weak. That's why he's moaning, that's why he's having trouble moving. Do you get that sense?
Yeah, because he's just been eating that animal blood, so...
Yeah.
That's not as nutritious as human blood.
Yeah, he will look much more strong and ferocious later.
He'll flap those wings later on, yeah.
Yeah, there's no wings or anything right now. The best he can do is kind of leap out of the corner and use his claw to slash open this guy's neck. And then it's like a water fountain. He's like a Mr. Wiggle. He's like playing around in the blood and lap, 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 lap. And yeah, by the time Clemens wakes up and goes to see that no one's at the wheel, he finds the knife. Everyone thinks, oh, maybe you killed him.
Yeah, they start doing this whole, murder mystery thing, and okay, yeah, let's have this be a paranoid thriller, as the slasher goes around taking them out and people start turning on each other. These ideas are too interesting for this film, though.
Yeah, I agree. I really thought that there would be more of that, and especially since this Dracula, is not a very efficient eater. I mean, blood was left everywhere, he's very messy. Mm-hmm. I don't know how he's getting enough blood to survive out of this. This is why he has to eat the whole crew instead of just part of the crew, I guess. He's not, what do they call it when you use every part of the animal?
Yeah, snout to tail, he is not.
Snout to tail. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, so I thought this would be a paranoid, these sailors turning on each other, but no, it's just going to be like so much in this movie, the idea will be floated and forgotten.
Mm-hmm. And you have to believe that there was a draft where it mattered. And as is very common in rewrites that go on for years and years.
Decades.
The next writer undoes the good idea you had in your draft. And so that, again, I can only imagine how good the script was at its start because now there's nothing left. You know, like it's just been devoid. They've spent too much time wringing their hands and it's just devoid of, tension. That's really what you need here is you need suspense.
Yes, yes.
And seeing the crew turning on each other. We know Dracula is going to eat them. That will never be suspenseful. That might be satisfying. That might fulfill the gorehound in me. But I'm never going to be like, ooh, is Dracula going to be in? Yes, Dracula's in there and he's going to eat them. But what are the crew going to do to each other? And telling that human story is where it has a chance to tell us something about human nature.
But you kept mentioning the film Alien, and that was their big influence was Alien. And you know what? I've seen Alien more than a few times, and when I watch that movie, I still get tense. I know everybody's dead except for Ripley. I still get tense. It's all about how you film it. And I wanted to call out, I liked the set design, and I liked what I liked about this film, but what it's lacking is a sense of dread throughout all of this. Between the kills, the way everybody's playing it is so lacking suspense. I'm not getting tension off of these actors. I think that the performances are decent. They certainly are convincing, but I really think that if the actors were more tense and more keyed up as a result of what's going on, it would help sell tension to me more. Instead, I find myself watching this very much the same amount of energy as I would watch a chamber pot film. You know what I'm saying?
There's Sigourney Weaver, and then there's the other woman in Alien. I don't remember who that is.
Lambert.
She's like terrified in that film, and like you buy into that terror, and I never get that from, like, if I'm looking at another female, I can only look at Anna in this one, the only female, but like, yeah, from her or any sailor, I don't get that terror. Like, okay, you're not going to do a John Carpenter The Thing with all the paranoia going back and forth, then just show me people like being super scared of whatever's on this boat.
Right. If there is a bad luck symbol and people don't trust the race of Clemens, wouldn't those sailors start planning to attack them? Wouldn't we have scenes of crew turning on crew? That must have happened in some drafts, but in this one, I don't get it. Anna wakes up finally from her coma and says, he is here, he is Dracula, gives them the whole rundown, and then 12 more days pass. Like, no one's got, like, they just cut to night.
Go through the crates!
Yeah, I want to know the next moment how people are going to respond, and the next thing we know, it's night and somebody else is at the wheel and getting their face smashed in. We get Larson killed.
Here's the thing, though. Yeah, this kill, you said the previous one was about 40 minutes in. I figured this one had to be like halfway through the film.
It's 50 minutes.
Okay, 50 minutes. Too long to get a great kill like this. But I saw this, I'm like, oh, like, yeah, you're not going to give me tension. You're not going to give me terror. Just give me some, like, gruesome effects then. Like, you got a cool Nosferatu Dracula design, and you're smashing faces in. If you could just keep this up for the remaining hour, I might be able to just enjoy this as a fun, gory, like we've been saying, slasher film. But no, that's not going to happen either.
Yeah, you talk about a slasher film, Stuart, but one of the things about a slasher film is the kills are drawn out. You think about A Nightmare on Elm Street, each dream where the person dies is, 5 minutes or so. You play with your food before you kill it. In the Jason movies, you always get the scenes, they're out alone in the woods, and then they're running from Jason, and they trip, and all of this. Here, you're watching somebody at the wheel, Dracula shows up, smashes their head in, and like a minute later, the scene is done. It's not enough time to have fun with this.
Oh, don't forget the James Wan thing. They do it not once, but twice. Someone goes, who's there? Knock, knock, knock. Something knocks in the darkness ahead of them. And then the person they thought they were talking to comes from behind and they go, well, then who was knocking? Like, you can only do that once, right? Like, you can feel like they're running out of ideas of how to. This movie doesn't feel claustrophobic. It feels empty. It's like we don't know how to work in this environment and create suspense. But yes, Vampire kills Larson and then he goes for the other guy, Olgarin, the big one. He's climbing up the rigging trying to get to the crow's nest. They have that moment. He's like, please, no. And then the vampire goes, please, no. It's a little Gollum, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. I'm like, all right, I can go with this. And then they just cut. And suddenly they find him still like in a comatose state. And again, days pass with him just laying on a table. I'm like, if you know that there is something biting and eating, like no one goes to bed again. We're going through everything. We're ripping open every crate. We're dumping all of this soil.
All those crates with the dragons that the Romani were scared of, you throw overboard immediately.
Yeah, I'm really mad at this crew for being as inactive as they are. They deserve to die.
Yeah, you'd think in a life or death situation, they would be far more proactive than they are. And yeah, it feels like they're just watching the movie with me, that they're just waiting for what the next page of the script tells them they need to do and who's going to die. I thought things might get cool with Olgarin because he's part of the death when Larson gets his face smashed into the deck. Olgarin is there. He's up in the rafters. And then when we see him, he's like got these white milky eyes, like he's got some kind of cornea disease. And I'm like, okay, now we're going to have more than one vampire. This is going to be fun. We're going to start having little vampires doing kills. And unfortunately, this is the only death that lasts long enough, but it's only done once and then it's forgotten.
Well, and don't forget that before we see his milky eyes, days and days of him laying on the table.
Yep.
Like, again, you can't make a month scary. You can make a week scary. But if this voyage is a month long, then it's just too dawdling. There's too much daytime. You're wondering, are you just whittling? What are you people doing? But yes, eventually, Toby gets in his clutches. Toby was told to hide in the captain's quarters. The captain is obviously very soft on this kid and wants him protected. And so he gives him his spyglass and tells him to lock the door, but he hears whispering. It seems like Dracula does get into people's heads. He kind of says your name, and you do stupid things in slasher movies like wander out of locked rooms and go into dark areas. And yeah, this Olgarin grabs him and I think is dragging him to Dracula, but the kid ends up going back into the captain's quarters, locks himself in, and finds out Dracula is already there.
And this was no shock to me, too. I did have a wonder at the beginning, will you kill the kid? And then I was like, yeah, of course they're going to kill the kid.
They got to kill everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, again, there's no survivors. Yeah, I did figure Clemens would find a way off. I figured they would have him get away in a rowboat. But yes, everyone else is dead. And yeah, they're obviously wanting us to be horrified that a small child dies, but this is not new to horror fans. We have many times seen the 12-year-old be victim. And yeah, I fully expected him to die in this moment, and he does. Only the captain can't wrap his head around it. He doesn't know what movies he's in. He's still saying stupid things like, I saw him move, let's keep him alive, let's...
Well, I mean, having at this point, they saw Olgarin, like, burn up in the sun. They've tied him to the mast, and he burns up. Like, that's not natural. A man of science has never seen that before. You should know something is going on, really, by this point.
Right. Is Clemens' scientific belief getting in the way of him accepting that there's a vampire? Because I don't really see that. I don't really see him making logical choices and saying, oh, this is just the disease that's making them catch on fire. Yeah. Again, what are these people doing? So, yeah. You now know there's a creature stalking you, and they even go through all the stuff and find, like, it's no surprise, it's the biggest coffin with the metal ends that have the special pop-out lid with the cane inside. They know where it sleeps. Okay, burn that thing.
Yes.
If you listen to the captain's log, they took not only these 50 crates, but 10 barrels of petroleum. Light this shit up. Do not let sun go down before you're having a vampire bonfire. This is outrageous.
Agreed. And I mean, you've got Anna there helping with this investigation. She knows all of this is going on. It's really frustrating how little is occurring during these moments of investigation. And yeah, the fact that they spilled all the beans at the beginning, even if they hadn't done it the way they did, I read the book. I know this chapter. I know this is a doomed voyage. And so I wish that it felt like there was more of a proactive stance, or again, more tension amongst the crew between each other, even as they get whittled down here. I mean, we've got only a handful of people left.
Joseph, you mentioned this one, Jacob, about there's someone that finally realizes, hey, there's a lot of lifeboats here, and why don't I try getting away? If we're too attached to the Demeter not to burn it down to sink it before it gets to dry land, then why don't we just leave? And that's what the cook does, and he'll find out that Dracula's a bat. He can fly out there and get you.
And cool scene. I love it when Dracula lands on the bow of the ship and he's spreading those wings. I could go with a lot of bullcrap if you just had lots of cool shots like this, some cool deaths. Like, I think this looks great. It's just, nothing has made sense to this point, and I haven't had enough of that gore or enough of that paranoid type of thriller thing going on. So I'm like, neat shot, good design, good effect there, but okay, let's go to the next scene. I'm just kind of bored by this point now.
Yeah, absolutely.
At this point, with this death, we've now seen everything Dracula has to offer. We saw the wings, we see him land, we see him head to toe, we know what he looks like. Pretty good makeup job. I'm going to give a compliment to this actor. He has come from a lot of these kinds of horror movies. He played Crooked Man in Conjuring 2. He was, I think, the fat creature in the Scary Stories movie.
The best creature, yeah.
Slender Man, he was Tom Cruise's mummy or whatever in all those shots. Wreck, R.E.C., he worked in those movies. So yes, he has a long history of being a creature, and he's a good Dracula. Or, he's a good Nosferatu. I don't think this movie has a Dracula, but he is a good vision of something horrifying. But there's nothing more to show, and we've still got 5 days and 30 more minutes.
Yeah, it's killing me. It really is. I'm sitting in the theater wishing I was enjoying this film more than I am. And I'm on my notes, just keeping track. Okay, how many more people do we have to kill? How many more minutes do I have to watch them die? And then we're going to get kind of a faster rate of death now that we've had Dracula revealed. We are going to get to what this film will call its climax. I don't know that I experienced a climax with it, but it was not very climactic. They're going to finally decide to sink the Demeter.
Yeah, I think that after they pushed Toby over, that was a gruesome image. But, even though it's predictable that, Toby would catch on fire, the fact that he attacks his dad and, singes his beard. I love the fact that the man walks away with, burn beard.
Yeah, I thought the captain was going to die of fire, too. He gets quite a bit lit from Toby.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a nice detail, that he got, these third-degree burns because he wouldn't let the boy go.
Yeah, so now he's sort of given up. He's not in control anymore. He's captain in name only. He's gone into his room and is reading his logs and holding a gun and babbling that Dracula is telling him he'll bring the boy back if they get him to dry land. But everyone else knows we can't get to dry land. If we get to dry land, the thing that's killing all of us is going to kill all of England. And so, that should have some stakes. Everyone should be ready to die, right? This is self-sacrificing. Or at least get in the boats, sink the ship right now. Do it right now, get in the boats, and watch it go down. But for some reason, I guess they don't want to row that far. They have to get really close to England and then decide they want to sink it.
That seems about on par for this crew.
Yeah.
But I do remember reading that the captain was tied to the wheel of the ship when the ship was recovered off the coast of England. So they're going to keep to that. The captain is going to tie himself up to the steering wheel and...
So what? Again, I say, so what that you're doing that one image from 100-year-old movie?
You have a 2-hour film to explain why he ties himself to that and make that really dramatic and poignant, and nope, it's just we got to check this box off.
And I wanted to say that, yes, he does tie himself to the wheel, but the damn vampire, bites him, and then Clemens unties him. So, they don't even have the right continuity for the damn movie that they're supposedly doing an interquel for. But anyway, let's talk about, this rousing climax where they've decided they're going to sacrifice the ship. And the plan is, Wojciech's just got to sink it, but for some reason he's in the crow's nest with the other dead meat character, Abrams. And that means that the bat can fly around. And Abrams does have kind of a cool death that he gets caught in the ropes in the rigging and ends up splattering red all over the sails.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. Little too late, but it was probably my favorite death of the whole movie, to be honest.
Yeah. And Wojciech falls through the cargo hold, breaks his leg in a graphic way. His bone literally shattered and poking through his leg. I don't know why you were up there anyway. Now he's got a limp to the side and axe into the hull like he was always supposed to. And he only gets the thing starting to leak by the time the vampire finds him and bites him. So the ship isn't going to sink. The first scene of this movie told us that. Every other Dracula movie told us that. This was a non-event done without any tension. Done by a stupid person without any tension.
And I said earlier, I kind of thought that Clemens might live. He and Anna, they are going to be out at sea. And so I'm like, okay, there is a way to have your cake and eat it too. There's a way that this ship can arrive with no survivors and Clemens, who is our hero, would live. Because I did think for a lot of reasons Clemens wasn't going to die. I think he should.
Yeah, he was going to take on the name like Van Helsing and hunt this thing down.
Yeah, I'll put it out there. I think this movie would be better if it was completely nihilistic and bleak and everybody died. The fact that they undercut that ending even pisses me off a bit.
I mean, I don't know that it matters either way. Who cares? I don't care enough about Clemens to care whether he is alive or dead by the end, because in the end, this is a story about Dracula, and Dracula's got to go bite Mina, and like Jonathan's got to stake him, and like everything that I know that happens in the book has got to happen, and it involves none of these bozos. So who cares? But we're supposed to care. Again, this is where one writer, maybe several of them, thought it was important to speak to the idea that Clemens was having an existential crisis. And there was some lip service about trying to understand God. And he has a speech here at the end. You tell me, Jacob, I heard you saying that it sort of brings it together, that he's calling Dracula out and saying, you think you're a god, but you're not. You sleep in dirt. You feed on blood. You are afraid of death. You're just like me. And I don't know, they kind of like, he and Anna take turns shooting at it and knocking some rigging in it. They act like they hurt Dracula, but in the end, the story's not going to allow them to vanquish him, and they're not going to play any factor in preventing anything that we know to happen in the Bram Stoker novel.
Yeah, he's just going to get like crushed by a falling beam and then they jump into the water.
Yeah, and even though the ship makes it to dry land, they're hanging out on some rock or something when the sun rises. And yeah, stupidly, he's been giving all these blood transfusions. Was this a love story? Was he in love with her? Are we supposed to think that the reason why he kept giving her blood was that he was crushing?
I just took it because he was a doctor.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that in this day and age, it is more politically correct to neuter your characters and not have forced romances just because they happen to be the leading man and the leading lady. So I think this movie is completely devoid of romance and sex.
Then why does Clemens turn to her after she's like, I've made the choice to die? Which I'm like, she did not. She is caught in the sun's rays. They couldn't even do a blood transfusion now if they wanted to. He has no equipment. She's going to burn. But he turns to her and is like, you saved me. What do you mean? In what way did she have any impact on him?
I mean, she did tell them there's a vampire, guys, and then they did nothing about it for a month.
That's saving them?
For this film, it is.
Again, I took this as metaphorically, like she did something to restore his soul, which is why I was reaching for romance.
That's why it's so weird at the end. He's like, I've seen evil, but I've also seen beauty. I'm like, really? Is that what this film is about? Like, Anna was this point of light for you that gave you optimism in the world? That's what I was supposed to get out of this?
Yeah, a reason to go on living was this, sex slave of Dracula? What? I just can't imagine what the screenwriter was thinking. But she burns up real good, and we jump to London, where, they act like Clemens is going to put an end to all of this stuff.
This cracked me up because, I'm like, I know how this story goes. I've seen all the Dracula movies. I know the Dracula story. And you're telling me this is from the novel Dracula. So it has to go that way. So Clemens, he's not going to do anything. They set up a sequel. Like, he's going to go chase this guy down. I guess he's going to die at the first act, and Van Helsing's going to take over in that one.
Because he has the paperwork from the ship, he knows that all those boxes went to Carfax Abbey, and he's just waiting till daylight to go over there. But we all know that Jonathan Harker and Van Helsing are the ones that take care of this problem. So it's just laughable that this guy thinks he is going to do anything. And I don't know, would they actually make a sequel that changes the Bram Stoker novel? If this were indeed profitable, would they change Bram Stoker for him?
That's what I was going to say. I was just going to say that is, if this movie had done well, would it be heresy to have that sequel? I think you could do it. I think you could just continue a Clemens versus Dracula story and go away from Bram Stoker. They've already taken what Stoker wrote and added an hour of extra material to it and added a boy and his dog. Why not just add more vampire hunting that is outside of Nina and Harker and all?
Or to frame it another way, why do Dracula if you're not going to do anything about Dracula? Like, this is a waste. They were actually trapped by this concept. This concept meant that they couldn't do anything that would surprise people. It didn't help them a whit.
I mean, they could have surprised us. They didn't make that effort. I'm not saying this is a bad idea. Like Dracula taking out people on a ship, that could be a good movie. This is not a good version of that.
Again, I don't see any universe where this is a good idea. I don't see how Dracula, caught in the middle of his known story, gets to do anything. Like this side quill kind of thing.
I'm saying you use this as a jumping point. I don't think you need to like go based on the known story. But again, Alien or The Thing with Dracula on a boat. Like, yeah.
You would have been so much better at just having it be a random vampire.
Sure.
Like, that it's Dracula and that we know where he ends up and that none of these people matter to him.
I mean, I feel like when I say Dracula for this film, I am saying generic vampire because that's what he is here.
Well, is he? Again, the intertitle told you. I know you didn't like hearing it.
I know, it's based on Bram Stoker's Dracula.
That this is not a change of Bram Stoker and not a different story, but a way of more fully appreciating the story we all should know.
I agree. That's why that intertitle is such a problem for me.
Yeah, but anyway, poor Clemens. He got a scratch on the neck, and Dracula, I do like the fact that he brings back the knocking game one more time with the cane. Gives him another scratch. Yeah.
And he's got a top hat on.
I love that. Yeah, he still looks like nosferatu, but in an English bar, they don't even care. Everyone's blitzed out of their mind. They don't notice.
So, Jacob Stewart.
You're going to ask?
How quickly would you jump ship on the last voyage of the Demeter, Jacob?
I mean, look, I was willing to give it almost halfway through the film. I was almost willing to give this a second chance once I saw that face get smashed. I'm like, oh, like, yeah, give me some base thrills. You have given me nothing else. You got a cool vampire design. Again, I don't really want to say Dracula, but cool vampire, cool monsters design, some cool gore in that instance. Do something with that, and they don't. The fact that they set up a story where we know how it ends, and then they don't try to put a twist or try to make it about characters or some kind of conflict. That is the baffling thing. Like, the only reason I would say watch this before The Boogeyman is because I could see the monster in this one. Like, it was that level of tedium throughout most of this film. And I kept wanting to like it because I like that creature design so much. But wow, there's, no tension, no scares, not a whole lot to really hold on to. I could give it those small compliments that I did, but otherwise, 6.5 million, you guys were lucky. After seeing this, not recommend.
My theater was packed, though. I don't understand this. I was in a 50-seat theater, but there were not that many empty seats on a Tuesday night. I was like, why has everybody come out for this? Although the ladies next to me, I think, came for 80 for Brady and were shocked it wasn't in theaters and decided to see Dracula.
80 for Brady's still out? No, when I went to go buy my ticket for this online, like a couple hours before the film, no seats had been sold. There ended up being about 6 people, all elderly people. Like, I guess the old people, they want to go see Dracula or something during the weekday or something. But yeah, it was a pretty empty theater. Deservedly so.
Stewart.
Yeah, Clemens keeps repeating it throughout the movie. He wants this thing to make sense. My request is more simple. I need it to be tense. Like, it doesn't have to be logical. Again, I don't think that there's a whole lot to ponder here. Yeah, Dracula got on a boat. What's going to happen? Everyone gets eaten. And surprise, that's exactly what happens. But you can still make a worthy slasher out of that if you have a director that knows how to set up a shot to get the creeps on and can really, make us care a little bit about these characters that are dead meat. And the problem, again, it starts with Inception. You just have low stakes. Sorry for the pun, but this Dracula movie has no stakes. And so it's just boring. Just throughout scene after scene, you can predict the lines that people are going to say. You can can predict what's going to jump out and when. And again, what is the point of all of this? I can't imagine this ever was a good script. All these years of tinkering have left it feeling very empty indeed. And so, it's a handsome looking ship. The cast is fine. On a surface level, this thing is incredibly mediocre. So I don't want to leave people with the impression that this is a terrible, terrible film, but it's a terribly dumb idea. And nobody is going to see the tragedy that this is the last of the Demeter we'll ever see. I don't want any more of this ship, and you won't either.
I don't want the first voyage, the second voyage, or this last voyage.
Yeah, the previous Dracula movies gave us exactly the amount of Demeter we needed. And this movie proves there is no movie in the last voyage. So, yeah, mild not recommend.
And I'm kind of there with you, Stuart, but my tedium grew as the movie went longer, and so it becomes just a solid not recommend from me. I wanted to like it, and just looking at the film as a technical achievement, there's nothing to not like. I do like the creature design. I do like the set design. I like the shots. I like some of the editing. I liked it when they did that little montage and had the inserts of the maps and the nautical equipment and the sails going up. I mean, it is a perfectly finely made film that is undercut by a complete lack of tension, and I honestly look at the director for both the lack of tension and the lack of performance that would provide that from all of these actors. I think that they should have been, George Lucas should have been there to tell them all to do this faster and more intense.
That's a sad state when you need George Lucas to come in to fix your movie.
Or somebody. Again, I really do wish we could just drag and drop this vampire, because I do think it's a good look. When you just think about the makeup job, head to toe, this monster deserves a better film than he was given.
Yeah.
Give him another boat. Get him off of this dull jungle cruise.
But the fact that I was just so disinterested throughout this movie makes this, of all the vampire films we watched this year, only Dracula Untold do I like less.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in that camp as well.
Oh, I had forgotten about that one.
Yeah, the fake Marvel movie, superhero Dracula, just conceptually shouldn't have happened. But this one's pretty close. Again, I appreciated that they wanted to be scary. I want a scary Dracula movie, but this movie's not scary at all. And so, still, if you want the best Dracula movie, it's 1921's unofficial Nosferatu. That is the best Dracula has ever been. It's not even a Dracula movie. But we're kind of done for Dracula for now. I know that he's going to hook up with other Universal monsters, and we'll cover those monster mashes sometime in the future. And I know that Robert Eggers, who is a director we've talked about with The Witch.
Excited about this, yeah.
He also made The Lighthouse and The Northman. He has made it. It has been filmed. I don't worry about the actor's strike or the writer's strike. This thing is in the can, and we should, within the next 12 months, get a remake of Nosferatu with Pennywise, Bill Skarsgård, in the title role. And Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah, Renfield's coming back.
And Johnny Depp's daughter being his victims. Willem Dafoe is the Van Helsing part, actually. And so we'll pick up Shadow of the Vampire and do that whenever Eggers' film comes out.
Yeah, I always found it funny that Nicholas Hoult did a Dracula film and a Nosferatu film pretty much back to back.
Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing that Guillermo del Toro's next movie is a take on Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, that he is making with Universal. So that seems like the logical next leg of our journey through Universal Monsters, is that we got to cover, Boris Karloff and all the films that have the green guy with the bolts in his neck.
I've not seen most of those, so I look forward to finally seeing Bride. Actually, I think I've seen Bride. Would that include The Bride, though? Please tell me we'd have that remake.
Well, Maggie Gyllenhaal is remaking Bride of Frankenstein for Netflix, so yes, at some point I think we would want to bring in the Sting movie from the 80s. Jennifer Beals, all of that. I do remember that one. And Branagh, we'll do the Branagh Frankenstein, even though it's not Universal, because, if we did the Coppola with Dracula, we got to do the Branagh Frankenstein with De Niro.
De Niro was a Frankenstein? I don't know about this one. Sounds amazing.
That's where the problems start. It's not where they end, but anyway.
I've seen this one, and oh boy.
It's really bad, entertainingly bad, as I recall.
It is trying to be like Bram Stoker's Dracula. They're trying to go back to Mary Shelley and get away from the Universal and go back to the ideas that Mary Shelley wrote in her book Lo those many years ago. And maybe, certain ideas need to stay on the printed page, is all I'm going to say.
Yeah, maybe Branagh was great with Shakespeare with nothing else, is what I would offer. But anyway, I'm guessing by 2024 we'll be getting us some Frankenstein on. But first we got to get back to DC, because this opening weekend we have a new DC movie. We'll review it Tuesday. Can anyone tell me what a Blue Beetle is?
I can tell you. I mean, we have kind of reviewed him before. He was the basis for Night Owl 2 in The Watchmen.
Okay.
Wow.
That means very little to me, but all right.
Yeah, to me, I was talking with Marjorie and saying, I'm going to go see Blue Beetle. And she's like, who's Blue Beetle? And I said, well, he's basically Hispanic Iron Man. And her mind immediately went to like his suit had hydraulics and was playing some Santana.
Like a lowrider or something?
Oh my gosh. Like a lowrider Iron Man. Yeah.
I mean, it's got George Lopez. They might do that.
Yeah, that's something to be concerned about.
Come on, guys. It's Miggy from Cobra Kai.
Somebody needs to take Stuart and I out for a drink and we can tell all about our George Lopez pitch for a sitcom in the 90s.
Didn't he have a sitcom in the 90s?
By us, you mean yours. Yes. Yeah, he did. He did.
He did. And he could have had another one if he listened to us.
I'll have to take you guys out for a drink then. I want to hear that pitch.
Yeah. Anyway, so yes, Tuesday, Blue Beetle. Next Friday, be a patron. You can join us for the Seven Samurai.
So thank you in advance for your support. We hope you all can join us for the Seven Samurai next Friday. Hope you've enjoyed this bonus now playing this week. And now, may the evil spirit be cast out until the end of time.
Be thou exorcised, O Dracula, and thy body long undead find destruction throughout eternity in the name of thy dark, unholy master. In the name of the All-Holiest, and through this cross, be the evil spirit cast out until the end of time.
Thank you for listening to this Now Playing Podcast movie review. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Listen to them. The children of the night. What sweet music they make.
Help us spread the word about this show by leaving a 5-star review on Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, or your podcast store of choice.
But even if it would work, do you expect me to agree to anything so fantastic?
Want more reviews like this one? In the archives section of NowPlayingPodcast.com, you'll find more than 1,000 in-depth movie reviews from our panel of hosts.
I hope you will like it.
On our site, you can hear reviews for every installment in the world's biggest film franchises, including the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Star Wars, Spider-Man, Batman, X-Men, James Bond, Middle-earth, Jurassic Park, Fast and Furious, and Transformers.
You do not know why you came here tonight. It was because I wished you here.
Plus, we have individual movie reviews, such as Titanic, E.T., Inception, Big Hero 6, Ready Player One, Pulp Fiction, Apocalypse Now, Dr. Strangelove, and hundreds more.
I want to be what you are, see what you see, love what you love.
And come back to NowPlayingPodcast.com next Tuesday for another all-new movie review podcast.
You're always leaving on me my film.
Support from listeners like you keeps Now Playing Podcast on the air.
Isn't eternity together better than a few years of ordinary life?
You can donate directly by tapping the support button at NowPlayingPodcast.com.
A good prince would have paid that price for peace.
And you can join our crowdfunding campaign for early access to new episodes, exclusive reviews, and bonus reviews
the spider spinning his web for the unwary fly.
Now Playing Podcast is produced by Arnie Carvalho.
Okay, obviously we're dealing with a little bit more than just narcissism here.
Associate produced by Jason Latham.
I am the king of my kind.
Now Playing is edited by Heath, Santiago, and Arnie.
I condemn you to living death, to eternal hunger for living blood.
Now Playing credits read by Brock.
Words, words, words.
The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual hosts and may not reflect the views of Venganza Media Incorporated.
How can you expect me even to listen to you when you're concealing the truth about yourself?
Venganza Media Incorporated is not affiliated with, and this podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by any entity that created the film analyzed herein. All movie clips and music included in this podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders. They are included here for the purpose of review, and no infringement is intended.
Master, we are here. You can't hear what I'm saying, but we are here. We are safe.
Now Playing Podcast is an exclusive trademark of and may not be used without the express written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated.
Your impotent men with their foolish spells cannot protect you from my power.
Now Playing is a Venganza Media production, copyright 2023, and no part of this show may be reproduced, repurposed, or redistributed without the written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated. All rights reserved.
Good night, Mr. Renfield.